morning. First slide here. The Smithsonian has been dedicated to understanding and sharing information about the planet Earth since we were founded in 1846. Smithsonian uses research skills and creativity to convene discussions and formulate action to protect our planet. But it's never worked alone. Citizen science volunteers and partner organizations are key to these accomplishments. The Smithsonian Conservation Commons builds on these traditions of research and collaboration. So today I'm just going to give you some historic snapshots of our commitment to planet Earth. And we've really done sort of 4 different types of areas: data recording, preservation and dissemination, national collections for natural history, baseline biological surveys, and conservation action. Smithsonian is pretty good at research and sharing. However, translating research into effective action is difficult. So today, with all of you, we're seeking new ways to share information and come up with solutions to sustain our planet. Now, data projects come and go, but the Smithsonian maintains data for the long term. In the 1840s, Secretary Joseph Henry created a network of volunteer weather recorders, one of the first U.S. citizen science projects. And he made the weather data public, and he posted a daily weather map in the Smithsonian Castle. And eventually this led to the National Weather Service. We continued to record climate data about areas that we studied. Next slide. However, in 1964, a very passionate environmentalist named Dillon Ripley became secretary and expanded systematic environmental monitoring in such areas as the Chesapeake Bay and in Panama, where our tropical station is. Today, these programs have evolved into Global Earth Observatories, or GEOS programs, collecting and sharing online atmospheric, terrestrial, and marine environmental data with partners across the globe. So collecting and sharing this climate data is one of our contributions to understanding our planet. But we're best known for its vast collections, which you see here. Natural History Museum has over 145 million specimens. In 1850, when naturalist Spencer Baird became the first curator, he repurposed those weather observers into a collecting network. And so many specimens flooded in, Spencer Baird called himself like the sorcerer's apprentice who had set those maps in motion but could not stop them. And the National Museum is our voucher collection for North America. And the specimens are really carefully documented so new questions can be asked of our historic specimens using techniques like genomics or studies of pollutants in specimens. The data collected about specimens is as important as the specimens to understand how the world is changing. And when ecologists restored Gray Ranch in New Mexico, they asked us, what used to be there? The Smithsonian Archives held 19th century field notes that documented the relative density and distribution of organisms, invaluable data for restoration. Today, these field notes are digitized through grant funding and transcribed online by volunteers who make this valuable information searchable and available online 24/7, 365. Now, many of these specimens come from baseline environmental studies. When the military explored the American West, Secretary Baird sent along naturalists to document geology, flora, fauna. And these surveys provided a wealth of specimens and data on regions prior to Euro-American settlement. When plans were announced to build the Panama Canal, Smithsonian scientists coordinated a pre-construction biological survey and joined a field station consortium. Today, that field station is the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, which has created many programs to monitor and respond to environmental changes in the tropics. In the 1960s, we began to study the Chesapeake Bay watershed after we were given some land there. Now the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, it carries out major studies of estuary systems and seeks solutions to environmental problems. Now, since our early years, Smithsonian curators have raised the alarm about environmental change. In the 1870s, Secretary Baird studied the greater Gulf of Maine fisheries and saw that the Atlantic fish stocks were really depleted. He found limits on fishing were completely politically impossible, and fish hatcheries were not very successful in dealing with this. And then people started introducing non-native species, really creating havoc in the environment. These problems remain today, but we're hearing some interesting new solutions, and this is part of being able to share with other people. We must find ways to galvanize action for solutions. Now, museum curators have assisted in a variety of conservation efforts, for example, providing background information to Rachel Carson for her Silent Spring, and helping to write the Endangered Species Act in the 1960s. Another example is the American bison. In 1886, taxidermist William Temple Hornaday was devastated to find that the plains bison had been hunted to near extinction, and he used his creativity, his artistic skills, to raise concerns. He created a museum exhibit that captured the beauty of this scene from nature. Next slide. And he also displayed live bison behind the castle, which led to the National Zoo. Here's early visitors. Hornaday combined art and science to advocate for bison, and they are still with us today, a real success story. The zoo remains at the forefront of our conservation efforts, especially its Conservation Biology Institute. The zoo is an early adopter of species survival plans and a pioneer in reproductive biology and reintroductions of such animals as the black-footed ferret and now the aurochs. The Smithsonian also convenes discussions of environmental issues. One of the first exhibits at our Anacostia Community Museum was the rat, man's invited affliction, and it was a response to local environmental concerns about this effect on the local neighborhoods. Today, the Anacostia Museum coordinates the rich urban waterways projects with a cadre of citizen science across the country and the world. Conferences include the Fitness of Man's Environment in '67. In 1972, we hosted the U.S. release of The Limits to Growth, the Club of Rome's project on the predicament of mankind, on the impact of population growth. And in 1989, the global environment, are we overreacting? These activities stimulate discussion of the impact of humans on the earth. Today, the internet facilitates data sharing, digital volunteers, and public education. The Smithsonian Conservation Commons works with these organizations across the globe in such efforts as species survival plans, global Earth observatories, coordinating citizen science, and convening discussions. Challenges remain, but the Smithsonian Conservation Commons is building on a tradition of monitoring and collecting, sharing and engagement, collaboration and citizen science, and positive action to inspire and protect the blue planet. Thank you.